Deathloop can't quite hold the mantle of masterpiece for its entirety, but when it hits, it fucking hits.
This is Deathloop. At the beginning of the end again. It's deja vu. In this game
Deathloop is the newest title from Arkane Studios, the developers of the popular Dishonored franchise and the incredible Prey remake from 2017. Much like their previous games, Deathloop falls into the genre of immersive sim, and to truly understand what Deathloop is, it's important to first understand what an immersive sim is. They're games that are typically first person and have the player explore a small but dense area. These areas will usually have one or two main objectives that need to be completed, as well as a lot of side missions and secrets that can be uncovered. Levels in Deathloop and other immersive sims can be dealt with in a multitude of ways, whether that'll be by hacking enemy equipment and unlocking doors, or by sneaking around and stealth killing enemies while slipping in through the back door, or by using all of your firepower to mow down any and every enemy that gets between you and your objective. They basically come down to a small sandbox that the player can explore and move through at their own pace because of the flexibility and freedom that they offer. There's also a lot of intricacies within each of these playstyles depending on the unique aspects of gameplay and the player's toolkit. Effectively, if done right, any area should be able to be dealt with however you want to deal with it, and that's ultimately what makes immersive sims fascinating, and Deathloop is no exception. Admittedly though, I don't love immersive sims, and I don't love first-person shooters. I enjoy both, but none of my favourite games of all time fall into these two categories. I remember liking Dishonored 1 when I played it 10 years ago. I didn't really enjoy Dishonored 2, but I really liked Prey 2017. So where does Deathloop sit on that scale? Is it better than Prey? Is it a masterpiece like most of the reviews are saying, and should you buy it? As always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like, and maybe consider subscribing.
This is Deathloop. At the beginning of the end again. It's deja vu.
The opening moments show the player character Colt being killed by a woman named Juliana. Smash cut, and Colt is waking up on a beach with no idea where he is, no idea who he is or what has happened. After a short trek through a bunker filled with weaponry, special abilities, a radio, and a board full of information about strangers, Colt gets a call telling him to go to a nearby house. Upon arriving, he learns some valuable information, but gets caught between another version of himself and Juliana. Unfortunately for Colt, she doesn't handle this too well, causing him to fall to his death where he wakes up again on the same beach. But this time, he remembers what has just happened. If it wasn't obvious from the footage you've seen so far and the trailers you've probably watched, Deathloop is a Groundhog Day type story, where Colt relives the same day over and over again until you figure out how to break the loop. This is done by gaining enough information to understand how to kill 8 visionaries in a single 24-hour loop. The important information you're looking for is locked behind email threads, audio logs, and notes you'll find laying around rooms. Each piece of information you gain could teach you something about one of the 8 visionaries, or you could learn a code to a nearby safe, or you could unlock a piece of a larger puzzle, or you could figure out when the right time to explore a specific location would be, since Deathloop uses a fixed day-night cycle. Meaning each of the 4 locations can be visited at 4 different times of the day: morning, noon, afternoon, and nighttime. This system is one of the best features in the game since the amount of detail and work that has gone into each of these areas is consistent throughout each time period, causing one part of the day to look and feel drastically different from another. So when you're in the early game and you're still learning the layouts of each map, going there at a new time can make the level feel almost new again as enemy placements and props are rearranged. Even the decor and puzzles will consistently change. You'll need to work around this system's rules to gather the required information about the visionaries to break the loop. Each of the 8 visionaries are all hidden in each location and move around depending on the time of day. This is where the stacks of audio logs, text documents, and emails come in handy because they'll rather obviously give you hints on where and when to go somewhere. For the first 8 hours or so, this is the driving force of the game, and it keeps you gripped during every loop as information comes fast and thick. I almost never had a dull loop in those opening hours. Unfortunately, Deathloop can't keep its story and character reveals on track for its entirety of its 15-hour campaign. During the last act, when all the pieces of the puzzle have fallen into place, you'll begin to notice the static nature of the time loop and the limited number of possible outcomes for each visionary. What once felt like a sprawling open-ended maze of threads for you to discover, disappointingly boils down to a linear list of requirements you need to do to break the loop. By the end of all those documents you've read, audio logs you've listened to, and hours of painstakingly searching each and every room for clues, leads to only one outcome, killing all sense of replayability and urgency. To top off the linear ending, there are 3 uniquely disappointing and abrupt endings that offer nothing interesting in terms of story and characters, and nothing in terms of gameplay. Literally nothing. There isn't even an ending boss fight at the final location. It's just a 3-minute cutscene where you don't learn anything new. Seriously, the final area and a pretty important twist could have been cut completely and the game would be better for it. As fantastic as Deathloop sets up the story and world of Blackreef in the beginning, it's a sleight of hand as the execution is as far from the opening hours as one could imagine. Luckily, the gameplay is fucking incredible. Gameplay in Deathloop is almost perfect across the board, and that's coming from someone who doesn't particularly love this genre. In my opinion, the most important thing for an immersive sim to get right is the level design, since you're very likely to scour every inch of the environment. The first time I arrived in Updam, which is the first location you get sent to, I was just awestruck by the complexity and interconnectedness of the level design. It was almost overwhelming to begin with, as I tried to come to terms with how everything was laid out. I spent maybe an hour in Updam during my first loop, just walking in circles and going in and out of every building I could access, just begging to find somewhere I recognized. And this wasn't due to how large Updam was, it's because of how it builds itself up. Buildings will never have one entrance and exit, and they'll never be less than 2 or 3 stories high. A lot of the time, each floor of a building will have multiple entrances and rooms to explore, creating this rabbit warren-like maze that is just so much fun to figure out. Just like how the story feeds into the environment, so too does the time of day mechanic, as it will change how you explore any given area since the enemy placement will drastically change, or a path you usually take could be unblocked. For example, Updam is relatively easy to move through in the morning since enemies are never in groups of more than 3. A lot of routes are open, and there aren't many sensors or enemy turrets to worry about. Compare this to the nighttime, where there are large groups of enemies littered around every corner, and quite a few of the key tunnels have multiple turrets and sensors you'll need to hack or sneak past. And if you fuck up just once and make any noise or have an enemy spot you, you're going to have the entire zone after you. Thankfully, this change isn't as abrupt as I've made it sound. All 4 areas will slowly progress towards their final transformation, be that the party-filled Updam or the deserted complex. The level design here across each area at whatever time of day is some of the best I've experienced in a very long time, and it's easily the best level design to come out of a game this year. Moving throughout the world of Blackreef can be done in many different ways, depending on your playstyle and build. Just like Dishonored or Prey, Deathloop allows and actively wants you to try different pathways and routes to your objective. As soon as I unlocked the ability to double jump and teleport, I knew that was how I wanted to play, so I started to pivot my build and playstyle around those abilities. This allowed me to pass over rooftops with ease and dash from one building to another without being seen. Additionally, I chose to upgrade my hacking device, giving me the ability to hack enemy turrets, sensors, tripwires and binds at a much greater distance and faster than usual, turning me into a stealthy hacker who avoided combat at all costs and slipped in through the back door. Choosing to play this way also made the multiplayer aspect a breeze for me. At regular intervals, another player playing as Juliana can hack into your game to try and kill you. Juliana has her own equipment and abilities, such as Havoc, which increases her damage while lowering her incoming damage, or shapeshifting into a regular looking enemy. When Juliana is hunting you, you are unable to leave the level unless you hack the antenna in the middle of the map. But since I chose to have really high mobility and long range hacking, I could consistently hack the antenna without being seen and then quickly escape through the tunnels. There's a lot of intricacies within that one build, and there's a lot more to choose from, such as using your weapons. Gunplay in Deathloop should not be the reason why you play this, but it doesn't hurt that it feels really nice. The shotguns feel punchy and sound meaty, and the SMGs and pistols are light and snappy. You have a heavy machine gun with a lot of stopping power, but an excessive amount of recoil. There's also a nail gun that takes a second to pressurize before being lethal enough to silently kill an enemy. The lighter weapons can also be dual wielded for double the firepower, but I tended to find this less efficient on a controller since the recoil became uncontrollable. You can alleviate this by equipping a weapon trinket that lowers recoil, or alternatively, I'm sure using a mouse would offer a smoother shooting experience. If you prefer melee, you do also have a machete that is really efficient at stealth killing enemies, with some absolutely brutal animations. Slabs are another great way to change how you approach combat. There are 5 in total, and you've already heard about Shift, which teleports you over a short distance. Another favourite of mine was the Nexus Slab, which allows you to link nearby enemies together so that when one enemy takes damage, every other linked partner takes that same damage, allowing you to one-shot upwards of 5 enemies. To sum up gameplay in Deathloop, it's utterly fantastic. I mean, it's an immersive sim and they live and die on their gameplay, and Deathloop may just be the best in the genre. So far in this review, you've heard that I've loved the setup of the story and characters, but it struggled with its execution, particularly towards the ending. But also that the level design, RPG mechanics and gameplay is amazing. So why does the title of this video say it's no masterpiece when the majority of what I've said has been extremely positive? Well, this next section is all of the negatives I have with Deathloop, both small and large. Let's start with the UI because holy shit, it's bad. I cannot express how much I hated using this UI on a controller. Yes, I imagine a keyboard and mouse would do just fine since you can flick around the screen with ease. But using a controller, everything is just so damn slow. There is just so much screen real estate to get through, and to make it worse, this is a tile-based UI, meaning snapping around with the D-pad would work perfectly. Another technical aspect on PS5 is the ray tracing mode, and visually it looks great, but performance-wise it's basically unplayable, with constant drops to the mid-20s and an abundance of motion blur. After 30 minutes I started to get a headache, so I went back to performance mode and never looked back. Shifting towards gameplay, I wish the game gave you more reason to explore the environments and find secrets. Most of the unlockables come in the form of weapon and player trinkets, which tend to be passive upgrades or trinkets you're not really interested in. I really enjoyed solving the puzzles in each area since they're really well designed and require you to think outside of the box, but I was often disappointed with the reward. The lowest point of my playthrough were the 4 freezes I had in the menu screen, forcing me to have to close the game and start the loop again. This is also where I noticed unskippable cutscenes and radio calls. All in all, I probably lost an hour of gameplay because of these freezes. But the most consistent issue in Deathloop is the utterly terrible enemy AI. It's straight up unacceptable at times. Since I went the stealth route, I probably had more time than the average player to realize how poor the AI is, but I still think it'd be noticeable. They have all the classic AI problems like being blind and deaf. I once shot an enemy standing right next to another enemy and they did not flinch. I even walked up in front of an enemy and he didn't even care, he just kept on searching the ground in front of him. I once sat on top of a roof and killed enemy after enemy after enemy, and what did they do? They just kept running to the same location that I had killed their buddies a moment ago. I also saw an enemy walking into a door, and when I snuck up behind him and opened the door for him, he just kept on going without a care in the world. The enemy AI being this dumb also has an inverse reaction to game difficulty since it feels like you're playing on easy, and there's no way to alleviate this since the difficulty setting is static. I don't think I've ever played a game that ebbs and flows in quality as much as Deathloop. My opening hours were like a slow burn as I came to terms with the structure and level design, and that quickly turned into appreciation when I started to get a feel of exploring and solving the puzzles behind the 8 visionaries. I would jump from one loop to the next in awe of how well designed the gameplay is, how complex and well thought out the level design is, how well written the dialogue is, which is something I never touched on in this review, but it's really well done. But the next loop could be stagnant with little to no progression towards uncovering the visionaries or solving new puzzles. There tends to be too much aimless walking around and looking for clues for my liking, and this is due to how important every little bit of information can be. Because I missed a piece of paper stapled to a whiteboard in the mid-game, I was stuck on a certain visionary for hours. And the only reason I stopped looking was because I had spent 20 minutes searching the same environment. After that, I had a great streak of solving puzzles, killing visionaries, and unlocking special weapons. To wrap this review up, Deathloop creates a strong foundation with an appealing art style and great writing, imaginative level design, some great feeling weapons, and terrific puzzles. But unfortunately buckles under the weight of poor enemy AI, technical problems across the PS5 and PC version, and a conclusion that feels rushed, unearned, and in the end left a sour taste in my mouth. Deathloop is no masterpiece, but it's damn good. As always, thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. My next review will be on Kena Bridge of the Spirits, and I should have that out in the next couple weeks. I'm really excited to get my hands on that one and play through it. It looks just fantastic.